Okay, so we'll carry on with the saga of the air conditioning on the SX4. As you guys may recall from the initial part, disappointment ensued when the clutch wouldn't engage after changed the condenser coil and recharged the system. I overlooked the fact that there was more than one issue with the car. In any case, so here's the new coil, and it is nothing more than a simple coil. Copper wire obviously wound in the housing there and embedded in the epoxy, guys. I've had this fail once before. It may present as a similar failure in this case, but I'm not sure. In any case, the spec in the manual, there you can see it's being tested in situ while it's still installed on the compressor, but the spec here calls for the clutch coil resistance being somewhere between 3.5 ohms and 4 ohms. So I've just got my meter actually set up here. I've got the ground on the housing. Just connect to the hot wire. .7 ohms, bang on within the tolerance. So that's a good start. So just to make the point, I'm sure most of you guys are well aware of how this works. Of course, it's a magnetic clutch, right? So again, the coil generates the magnetic field and pulls the face of the clutch in order to engage the drive from the pulley to the crankshaft of the compressor itself, right? So let's just apply voltage to it. Ensuing current, of course. So as I said, I think about 12.6. Should be 3 and change current, just to simulate that I can actually engage the clutch, and then when you compressor or the air conditioning system wants to disengage it, of course it just de-energizes the coil. You get the idea. So keep in mind, guys, that we're actually going to be doing this job in situ. Since the system has already been serviced, it's still pressurized with refrigerant, meaning that it is absolutely imperative that you wear glasses through the entire process, just in the event something goes awry. My eyesight's worth a damn sight more than this car's air conditioning, I'll tell you that much. So let me just take you underneath, see what we're up against here. I have the plastic removed there, guys, as you can see. The under tray plastic is removed. Just a couple of plastic rivets and a couple of screws. Simple, straightforward. So as you can see, it's impossible to service because of the proximity to the structure here. It's impossible to service that in situ, meaning that we're going to have to take the compressor off its mounts. First things first, remove the belt, of course, and then there's 4 bolts that mount the compressor proper to the engine block, and we should be able to swing it down. We may have to, if memory serves, I think I had to remove the oil filter in order to get wee bit of room to swing it, but we'll one step at a time. So we'll remove the belt and the bolts. Nice reasonable temperatures for doing this. So tooling, guys, required to get the compressor adrift. I'll take you under momentarily to show you. 14mm long spanner for removing the serpentine belt. An angled ratcheting box end wrench is handy if you have one of those. One with an articulating head, because a couple of these bolts, which are 12mm head, are a wee bit tricky to get at. And again, a longer box end spanner to actually break them loose without breaking them, right? Again, articulating head ratchet with 12mm socket, ideal for removing this. They're no ridiculous, but a wee bit awkward. And I did have to remove the oil filter, try and time it. So you need an oil change. Of course, I just changed my oil, so I'm going to end up putting that back. Make sure you put these back on your melon, as I'm going to do as I go under here, guys. So let me show you the. So now this is the angle we actually have the compressor on. You can see pretty dusty, so I'll clean the face up here best I can and check the gap when we put it back. Obviously check that you're not dealing with a seized compressor to begin with, otherwise this is going to be trouble. Now there is the possibility I'll change this clutch when we put this back together. We're going to have a noisy compressor, and then we got another issue, right? But again, one step at a time. So there's the bolt we're going to need to remove in order to remove the clutch face. I think it's a 10mm. We'll see. and the whole assembly should just basically come apart. There's a circlip that retains the gubbins in here, so we'll get a look. So I'm not going to be able to show you me cracking the through bolt actually loose here, guys, because it requires 2 hands to do it. Well, I need one for the camera at the moment here. This is the ubiquitous, you know, AC clutch holding tool. You guys have probably seen these everywhere. They're dirt cheap. They're like 20 bucks. It doesn't fit ideally, but you can make it so you can use the pins or the steps here to actually get a hold on the face of the clutch. I'll show you what I mean. And there's not much torque on it, so you can put your 10, it is in fact 10mm socket through the through hole there and actually just crack the little bolt that goes to the crankshaft of the compressor itself. Let me just show you. Again, specs on at all times. So there's a through bolt. As I said, you just hold the triangular affair on the housing here. If you can actually catch the structure here, guys, to hold the compressor, that way it's no hanging on its lines, that might help the situation a wee bit. And as you can see, I've actually got this loose. So I'm going to put the camera down because there's going to be shims in here that I do not want to lose. So we'll take it apart and get a look. So be extremely careful when you remove this, guys, because as I said, there is going to be shims in there, and of course they can fly off into oblivion, never be found again. And of course those shims actually set the gap between the clutch face and the drive pad, let's call it, on the pulley. This is looking a wee bit rough, of course, right? I'll try and clean this up. Perhaps it hasn't been engaged for a bit longer than I thought. And there, of course, is the little bolt. As I said, there's not much torque on that. I'll give you the torque spec later on. Here's what we're up against, guys. You can see the circlip pliers there, removing the outer circlip that retains the pulley. And there's also an inner one that retains the bearing. And we may or may not require the puller. We'll see. There's the outer circlip there, guys. And I'm not sure if you can see it too clearly, but just the inside wee bit is actually the inner circlip I was referring to. So try and get this off without destroying it, of course. So managed to extract the circlip there without any issue. However, I cannot get the pulley off the shaft, so we're going to have to resort to some pullers of some sort. I don't think I can use the 3-jaw, although I'd prefer, but because it's in situ, it's very unwieldy and fouling on the structure. I think I'm going to have to go with the 2-jaw here. Either this one, which is pretty ropey. I don't like using this one because of the slop. It's a piece of kife. I'll try and use this one. See, you knock the tool and then you end up having to use it. So this one actually, because it's so ropey and because it's just so much flex in the tool, it actually offered me the best option to remove this. So it did actually come off without too much trouble, guys. Once you get it started, it kind of came off on its own. So there lives the bearing. The bearing's not in great shape on this. So next season you'll see me replacing this bearing. I didn't order the bearing. Ideally you replace the bearing now, guys, but because I'm in Canada here, it was only available in the States and they didn't ship to Canada, blah blah blah, you know the story. Pain in the ass. So it does appear that the coil is correct. It nicely fits inside the pulley there, as you can see. And yeah, so far so good. Let me just point out something quickly here, guys. You probably noticed the elastic band. This can save you so much grief when you're trying to put something in when it's flopping around and you're getting frustrated. A simple elastic band to hold it tight against the pulley, is the back side of the pulley as you're removing things, can save you a lot of grief. So back underneath, fellas, there is another circlip that retains the, I think I mentioned that circlip there retains the bearing. It does not. The bearing is actually pinched into the roller. I don't know if you guys caught that in the detail, doesn't really matter. But this is actually retained by yet another circlip right there. And when this failed the last time, the coils were literally falling out. It doesn't appear to be in that kind of state this time around, but yeah, it'll be easy enough. We'll check it again. Although I've already ohmed it, we'll check it again when it's actually on the bench. So don't be surprised if the circlip here is a wee bit reluctant to come out, and you might need to use a pick because the one edge there was stuck corroded pretty solidly in its groove. In any case, it is out here, guys. Again, I've got the meter set up, and I've actually already checked that. I'm happy to report there's an extensive degree of corrosion on the backside here. I thought, oh shit, I hope I couldn't have just cleaned that and avoided the expense, but it doesn't appear to be the case. Here, I'll just short the meter here so you can see that the meter's functional. We'll go right to a clean spot on the housing here with respect to the ground. And there's nothing. It's open circuit. So, well, that's good news. At least appear to be barking up the wrong tree. There's always a possibility you've overlooked something. Well, maybe, you know what, it's possible that you can see where here's the hot, obviously, and the coil actually comes out and is grounded on the housing. You know, I've tried to cut through the enamel here, but I can't get any continuity, so appears to be open circuit. So there's all the bits and pieces all prepped and ready to go back in, guys. I think I'll put a wee touch of blue Loctite on the bolt there. Yeah, so good time to go for a cup of coffee. So, way important detail here, guys, when you put this back in, there's a little, I think you can see it there, just above my finger, just above the circlip, there's a little indentation that has to mount up with a casting. It's not quite at the 12 o'clock position where you might expect it. Make damn sure that's probably the single most important thing on the installation here of the coil. Otherwise it's not going to sit properly, and of course the circlip sits in the groove all the way around. So once that's cleaned up, guys, inside of the race on the bearing there should just slip right over the shaft, or at least the casting. Circlip in position, and nothing's rubbing. Make sure to confirm that the casting, the coil itself, is correctly in position. Should be free to rotate. So there's the clutch face in position, guys. The through bolt, the shims hold the clutch face here. No, the face, but the armature, as they call it. And the bolt here is torqued to 11.5 foot-pounds, the manual tells you, but to me that's a useless unit. That's 138 inch-pounds. Right, so not required, but I thought I would just function this before I actually put everything in situ. So it's just a battery, guys. I'm just jumping 12 volts to the coil, and you can see it is actuating. However, it's not actuating on all 3 points. It looks like one of the points, there goes my light, looks like one of the points is actually binding a wee bit. So I'm glad I took a moment. It's not actually pulling in evenly. So one of the points is binding, it's acting like a fulcrum. I'm going to see if I can sort that. Okay, so the issue is this pin here is either worn or sticking a wee bit there, guys. I freed it up best I could. It's no ideal, but it's going to have to do. That explains the odd wear pattern that we've seen initially. Just a word of caution about actually using a battery here, or jumping the battery obviously in the car itself if it's more convenient for you. Yeah, it's only 12 volts, but watch when you take it off. Of course, there's going to be an inductive kick from the coil as the field collapses. Be aware. So between the state of the bearing and the state of the clutch, might be a good idea you anti-seize this, since I may be revisiting it. Not too distant future, entirely up to you guys. Torque on the mounting bolts there, guys, as you can see, 18 foot-pounds. Okay, so here is all back in situ, guys. It's all torqued up. Had to mount a little clamp on the plastic shroud there in order to keep the wiring. This is not the original wire, of course. It's an aftermarket part, so this is much longer, and I didn't want to re-splice it because I didn't have that contact, so I just doubled it up in the heat shrink, and then I just spiraled it and attached it to the structure. As you can see, just make sure, of course, it's well clear of the spinning components. Right, just put the belt back on. That's straightforward. Plastic back on. Well, belt back on, and then we'll run it, see how it goes. And kind of critically important, guys, of course, that you put your oil filter back in and adjust the oil level as required. Okay, so the good news is the clutch is engaging, and I do have some cooling. However, I'm not really happy with the degree of cooling, and the compressor is definitely, it sounds different than it did before. I don't recall it being that noisy. It's definitely suffered a wee bit of damage, I think. So I'm going to put a measure of oil in it, and as a last ditch effort to try and quiet the compressor and extend its remaining life a wee bit, and I'm going to put a wee bit more refrigerant in the process. I'll show you the lines. Let me take you outside. So let me just actually, let me turn the car off here so you can hear me. otherwise you're not going to be able to hear me. So when it's running, of course, guys, you should be checking the lines. So we'll start with the this is the high side discharge line from the compressor. That's hot enough that I can touch it, but I can't hang on to it. That's reasonable. The liquid line, this is like the, I know you can't really see it, but you see that silver wee bit reflecting the light? That's actually the thermal expansion valve. The liquid line here is warmish, and the suction line is just on the verge of forming some condensation, but not quite. So I think it's a wee bit undercharged. In fact, I'm sure it's undercharged because the cooling's not sufficient. It's not that hot today, right? It's only in the garage here, it's only not even 25 degrees. So I'm gonna put a wee bit more refrigerant in it. Okay, I'm happy. I shot about a ½ ounce of oil in the low side, and you hear the compressor? It is on. Here's the pressures. On the low side, just about 38 pounds. On the high side, about 170 at the moment. The clutch is not cycling, but it's staying put, so that's nice. I don't know if you can see or not. This line is, can you see that on my fingers? Maybe right there. Starting to condense water on it, so I'm pretty happy with that. The discharge line, I can just keep my fingers on it for a short time, so that's good. Liquid line, I can keep my hand on it, it's warm. About valve cover temperature is what I've read is sensible. Of course I could measure all this, guys, but I don't think there's any point. I think there is a point in measuring the compressor temperature. Let me get this. I'm really happy with it. The compressor's actually quietened right down. Okay. So there you can see the clutch is obviously running. So let's just shoot the body temperature. The compressor, 66 degrees. I think that's not too bad. Just sweeping it, 60 degrees. That looks reasonable to me. Right, I'm happy with this. So we're gonna call this a fix, boys. Of course, anytime you have a leak in the system, the acid test is, will it stay tight? And well, I hope so. I know this has been a long one. That's it, boys. Oh, let me show you the duct discharge temperature. I'm sure you're gonna want to see that. So there's the duct discharge temperature. Just about 10 degrees C. If I step up the RPM a wee bit, that's actually at full fan speed. If I drop the fan speed a wee bit, guys, we'll get a drop in the temperature, because the air lingers over the evaporator a wee bit longer and it actually extracts a wee bit more heat energy from it. Let me just raise the RPM to 1500, something reasonable or ridiculous. I don't know if you can see it, it is dropping. I won't bore you with the details. I'm pretty happy with that, guys. A wee bit lower idle would be nice, but listen, beggars can't be choosers. I'm happy with this. I'm just an amateur, so I'm happy. I've got some cool air. Nice. Right, that's it, boys. Cheers. Again, one of the rare occasions when you're happy to see something dripping out of your car.